Between 1933 and 1945, meticulous archival records confirm that over 3,000 German women were mobilized into the sprawling munitions factories of the Greater German Reich. Imagine vast industrial halls with towering ceilings, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that cast stark shadows over rows of humming machinery. Here, these women transformed raw metal into precision-engineered bombs, artillery shells, and critical aircraft components, each piece an indispensable cog in the relentless Nazi war machine. Detailed production logs and personnel records in state archives confirm the dedication and skills of these workers. State archives show production records and staff lists that prove these workers' discipline and skill, whose contributions not only sustained wartime production, but also radically altered the traditional gender roles prevalent before the rise of totalitarian ideology. Simultaneously, nearly 500,000 women were conscripted into the labyrinthine bureaucracy of the Nazi state. Hidden away in cramped government offices lined with typewriters and reams of paper, these women were tasked with the cold efficiency of transcribing execution orders, compiling deportation lists, and coordinating the vast logistics required for mass extermination. Archival documents from various state administrative bodies, now safeguarded in national historical institutes, reveal that each keystroke and meticulously stamped document was part of a calculated system. A system that dehumanized millions by reducing human lives to mere entries in a ledger. Beyond the factory floors and sterile offices, another dark facet of this regime unfolds within the oppressive walls of concentration camps. Over 3,500 female guards, as documented in camp rosters and detailed post-war trial transcripts, were stationed in these harrowing sites. Picture the dimly lit corridors of these camps, where cold concrete and iron-barred cells bore silent witness to unspeakable atrocities. In these settings, the presence of female guards, rapidly trained in methods of brutal enforcement, played a direct role in the daily dehumanization and torture of countless prisoners, as confirmed by survivor testimonies and Allied investigations. Among these figures of complicity, the notorious Irma Grace looms large. Irma Grace, born in 1923, joined the SS camp guard training at a young age and quickly became one of the most notorious figures in the Nazi concentration camp system. Official camp records and survivor testimonies confirm that she was directly involved in selecting prisoners for execution and overseeing brutal punishments at Auschwitz and Ravensbrück for extermination at the shockingly young age of 19. Visualize a young woman in a stark uniform standing at a guarded threshold, a threshold that separated life from death. Eyewitness accounts collected during the Belsen trial record that she meticulously selected inmates for forced labor and execution, with specific testimonies describing her use of a whip and other forms of physical punishment to enforce compliance. Her rapid rise within the SS was fueled by a documented willingness to employ extreme violence, which aligned with the regime's strategy to use youthful aggression as an instrument of terror. Contemporary investigative files corroborate multiple instances where her actions directly contributed to the deterioration of living conditions in the camp, with detailed cross-references in trial transcripts and survivor statements pinpointing specific dates and events linked to her cruelty. Her conviction at the Belsen trial, confirmed by extensive documentary evidence and corroborated by international military records, led to her execution by hanging on December 13, 1945, a verdict that remains one of the most thoroughly documented cases of individual accountability for Nazi atrocities. Equally harrowing is the case of Herta Oberheiser, whose medical experiments on children as young as 5 years old have been rigorously documented through trial transcripts and forensic analyses. In antiseptic rooms devoid of any human warmth, these experiments transformed vulnerable lives into grim data points, a grotesque perversion of medical science. Official trial records and forensic reports confirm that she injected gasoline and other chemicals into young prisoners to study their physiological responses under extreme conditions. Her experiments were part of a state-sponsored research program aimed at advancing Nazi medical objectives, with her actions meticulously recorded in SS and camp medical files. Historians have verified these details with post-war medical records, confirming that Oberheiser's actions were not isolated incidents, but part of a broader system of cruelty that broke every moral standard. The judicial reckoning in the aftermath of the war, however, was fraught with complexities. Hildegard Leckert, a former guard at Ravensbrück concentration camp, was eventually brought to justice after extensive legal proceedings. Archival court documents and trial records detail that she was sentenced to 12 years in prison for her participation in the daily atrocities within the camp. Although this sentence provided a measure of accountability, it also highlights the immense challenges faced by post-war tribunals in reconciling individual culpability with the broader mechanisms of state-sponsored terror. Recent investigations, utilizing cross-referenced census data and re-examined personnel files from Nazi archives, have uncovered the startling existence of a former Nazi nurse residing in Austria at the advanced age of 97. Her continued presence, confirmed by multiple independent sources and verified through official documentation, serves as a haunting reminder that the physical vestiges of that dark era can persist long after the guns have fallen silent and the battlefields have faded. Born in 1921 in the small town of Furstenberg, she was raised in a family that nurtured a deep sense of justice and instilled in her an unwavering commitment to ethical principles. Her academic journey at the University of Munich not only expanded her intellectual horizons, but also sharpened her critical view of the oppressive ideologies permeating society. Disillusioned by the pervasive cruelty and propaganda of the Nazi regime, Sophie, alongside her brother Hans and a close-knit circle of like-minded peers, co-founded the White Rose, a covert resistance movement that used the power of the written word to challenge totalitarian rule. Bravely, she engaged in the painstaking work of drafting, printing, and distributing anti-Nazi pamphlets, urging her fellow citizens to question authority and reclaim their humanity at a time when conformity was enforced by fear. Her arrest, trial, and eventual execution were meticulously chronicled in contemporary newspaper accounts and court records, immortalizing her as a beacon of moral fortitude and a counterpoint to the pervasive cruelty that defined the era. Amidst this landscape of terror and bureaucratic brutality, the luminous figure of Sophie Scholl emerges, a symbol of courageous defiance. As time marched relentlessly onward, the legacy of these events continued to echo into the present. Modern law enforcement and archival researchers achieved a significant breakthrough in 2021 with the apprehension of a concentration camp secretary, a woman whose meticulous work in processing death lists had long been buried in the depths of bureaucratic archives. Contemporary investigative reports and official statements affirm that her capture represents a symbolic, if belated, act of accountability. It underscores that the pursuit of justice for crimes committed decades ago remains a vital, ongoing process. Further deepening this historical mosaic, recently declassified intelligence files and corroborative witness testimonies have led to the identification of an ex-Nazi informant, discovered in her 90s, who played a key role in reporting Jewish families to the Gestapo. The precise details of her actions, preserved in meticulously maintained Gestapo records and validated by academic research, provide a stark illustration of how personal betrayal was systematized to serve a regime's broader agenda of surveillance and persecution. Each objective numerical datum, the over 3,000 women in munitions production, the nearly 500,000 in administrative roles, and the over 3,500 female camp guards, forms an integral part of a larger statistical framework that challenges the myth of a solely male-driven war machine. These figures, drawn from verified archival sources and scrutinized by renowned historians such as Richard J. Evans, illuminate a dual reality. One in which female agency manifested both in acts of unyielding complicity and in courageous resistance. They underscore that the legacy of these women is as multifaceted as the historical record itself. The industrial halls where millions of women labored come alive in the detailed accounts found in state production records. Each clatter of the assembly line and each spark from the machinery representing both the physical transformation of metal into weaponry and the symbolic transformation of societal norms under the strain of war. In parallel, the administrative offices, with their endless rows of typewriters and meticulously stamped files, reveal how bureaucratic efficiency was weaponized to execute policies of mass extermination. These contrasting images, drawn from confidential memos and archival documents, invite us to reflect on how ordinary spaces became instruments of extraordinary terror. Within this tapestry of statistical data and personal narratives, the human dimension of these historical events becomes undeniable. The juxtaposition of a 19-year-old enforcer like Irma Gresa against the heroic sacrifice of a 21-year-old resistor like Sophie Scholl paints a picture of a society torn between two extremes, one of cold, calculated brutality and one of daring, moral resistance. Similarly, the clinical cruelty of Herta Oberheiser, with her experiments on 5-year-old children, starkly contrasts with the painstaking judicial efforts that eventually held figures like Hildegard Lechert accountable, with a sentence of 12 years. As researchers continue to unearth forgotten documents and re-examine long-silenced testimonies, new questions emerge from the silent corridors of museums, memorials, and archival vaults. Could there still be hidden figures, whose names have been deliberately obscured by time and political expediency, quietly living among us today? Do the detailed records of industrial output and bureaucratic precision hint at a larger, more intricate network of participants whose full stories have yet to be told? Every newly uncovered document, each roster entry from a munitions factory, every typed government memo, and every survivor's whispered recollection adds a new layer to our understanding of this dark chapter in history. And now, as the final layers of this historical puzzle continue to peel away, a provocative cliffhanger beckons us to look deeper. In an era where the echoes of war persist in unexpected corners of modern society, might further investigation unearth additional revelations that will forever alter our understanding of the roles played by these women, those who enforced terror, those who resisted it, and those whose true stories remain shrouded in the mists of time. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden histories. This is Freak Files channel that bring dark history and horror stories to life via documentary. And remember, every woman's choice, whether of terror or defiance, demands that we shatter the silence of history.